So the last 24 hours or so for Manchester United have been surprisingly busy in the transfer window. There is so much news to talk about today, from Sesko really starting to heat up. I think that move could be sealed potentially by the end of next week. And because of that, there is of course updates regarding Hojlund's future. It looks like Sancho might finally be out the door with some credible links occurring now. Ganacho likewise. Reports have come out that he actually wanted to leave back in January, as well as a few other updates regarding Mainoo, Mason Mount potentially going out on loan. So let's get straight into it, starting of course with the exciting news of Benjamin Sesko. So I made a video yesterday talking about my concerns, you could maybe call it that. I basically broke down his record against English teams, explained how it wasn't that great and how he plays, and how I would have still preferred Ollie Watkins due to his Premier League proven record. But this is still a world-class potential striker that we look to be signing. Plus, if it means we get to steal yet another Newcastle target, you know what, the banter alone might make it worth it. So let's start with what Fabrizio Romano has been talking about. He said that Manchester United have already informed RB Leipzig that they are prepared to send a formal bid for Benjamin Sesko if the player accepts the destination. That is crazy. That tells me that we don't need to sell in order to buy Sesko, which is crazy. The fact that we're going to have spent, what, 62.5 million on Cunha, upwards of nearly 71 million on Mbeumo, and now we are prepared to bid for Sesko? And we'll get onto the price that Leipzig won for him in a minute, but that's crazy amounts of money for a club that is supposedly on their knees begging. But of course, Fabrizio did say that it depends on whether or not the player picks United over Newcastle. Well, there's also been an update there from Fabrizio as well. He said that Sesko is open to joining Man United even without European football. Now, I just need to go ahead and say right now, give a round of applause to Wilcox, Berardi, Amorim, everyone behind this deal. Vivell as well, obviously, for this one in specific. Because the fact that we've been declining so rapidly, it seems, over the last couple of years, both on and off the pitch, and yet we're still able to attract these players and sell a project to them to make them want to join and reject other clubs in far better positions than us. It's really telling that whether you believe in Amorim, whether you believe in the project, whether you believe in INEOS, there is clearly something tangible that they are able to sell these players, and it works. And so it's no surprise that Man United is supposedly very optimistic about negotiations with Sesko and Leipzig, and that internally they already assume that this transfer is a genuine possibility. We've already spoken about before that Sesko's been on the club's radar now for years, way back during Ollie days, and even with INEOS now on board, they are still going ahead to give the green light on the move. Now, the price floating around is about £65 million plus add-ons. Now, we are the front runners in this deal. Like I said, we're ready to put a bid on as soon as Sesko gives the green light. And Newcastle themselves have already seemingly begun to potentially move on to other targets because they fear that Sesko is going to go to Old Trafford. Now, they're not totally out of the race, but like I said, I think they kind of know that it's going to happen again, that they're going to miss out on one of their top targets. It's baffling that they're struggling this much to sign players, which only makes what I was saying earlier about Wilcox and Berardi and Vivell and Amorim's project and how they're selling it to these players only that much more magnificent. The fact that they're able to sell their project, which is, whilst of course a dream project, but from the outside a much more difficult one, over Newcastle, who were like, yeah, we're back in the Champions League, we're slowly going up, we've got a good squad, realistically a better squad than Manchester United, possibly. At least coming into this summer, that was the case. And yet we're beating them. It is magnificent. Now, let's move away from Sesko for a bit because we've got updates as well on Rasmus Højlund. So, according to Laurie Whitwell, Manchester United acknowledge that internally they might now have to accept a bid lower than Rasmus Højlund's book value, which is about £45 million, in order to sell him. Basically, I'm not going to act like I'm some sort of football accountant, but basically his book value being 45 million, that means if you sell him above that, then it's technically profit on a from a PSR standpoint. But if you sell him under that, it doesn't look good on the books. That's what I believe anyway. Hojlund, however, has a totally different idea. He said himself that he wants to stay at the club, stating that his plan is clear and that he wants to stay and fight for his spot. He went on to say that he's still very young and that people often forget that. He's only 22, that's the same age as Sesko, and he's learned a lot recently, with him going on to say that goes on to show in the most recent games in the pre-season where he's played very well. I don't know if I'd go on to say he's played very well. He's played better, but let's not pretend that bar was fucking hell, it was low. Now, I do agree with the whole he's still young. I don't think necessarily age, but in terms of experience, like I said, Højlund and Sesko are the same age, but Sesko has had so much more experience of men's football at a high level that I don't think the two are comparable at all. I think I said in my video yesterday that at Atalanta, before he joined United, Højlund had only played about 34 games, I think, of men's football for Atalanta, scoring 10 goals. And then you compare that to Sesko, who's upwards of like nearly 100 professional games at men's level. And so I do feel for Højlund in that regard. I get what he's trying to say there. And I think that's why when we originally signed Højlund, the plan was to also get like a Kane or someone else as a starting striker. But then you go and splash £75 million on Højlund, and then at that point, unfortunately, he has to be the starting striker. It was unfair on him, but you know what? He's also kind of mid for us. And so according to Chris Wheeler, Højlund is likely to leave if a deal is reached for Sesko, either on a sale or a loan. Now, we also spoke about yesterday how Leipzig's dream transfer target is Rasmus Højlund. I also said yesterday that I think that should be a dream destination for him as well. I genuinely think that if Højlund goes to Leipzig, or just the Bundesliga in general, he will do really well. But unfortunately for him, he's not done well at United, and despite him wanting to stay and prove himself, a Manchester United striker that started basically every game and only got 4 league goals shouldn't be the one to decide that. On to Jadon Sancho now though, because it finally looks like some movement is happening. And it's all because he is prepared to lower his wage demands, which I find crazy and so funny as well, because he's been linked back to Dortmund. Yes, that is right. He is going to run off back to Daddy Dortmund yet again. But the fact that Sancho is reportedly willing to lower his wage by as much as half is just crazy when you consider the fact that he had the choice to join Chelsea, a club where both the club and fans liked him, a club where he succeeded, a club where he's flexed on social media that he won a European trophy at, but he turned down the option to join them on 180 grand a week, only to now have to lower his wage demands to less than that. That is a fat, stinking L from Sancho. And you know what? I fucking love it. Now, from one player that we are desperately in need of selling to another now with Alejandro Garnacho. This is from Ben Jacobs. In terms of valuation for Alejandro Garnacho, Chelsea value him at 30 to 35 million pounds. However, United want in excess of 50 million. And so there's a lot of work to be done there. That being said, Ganacho himself wants to join Chelsea. He's keen on the idea. We all know that he wants to stay in the Premier League. That's why he's turned down options from other clubs. And so according to Fabrizio Romano, it was his priority to leave in January. He was the one pushing for the move, which I feel like such an idiot now in hindsight, because I was one of those ones saying, INEOS, don't you dare sell such a promising prospect that's come through our youth academy in January. And here I am, he stunk it up, his attitude stinks, and he was the one pushing for the move, not INEOS. It would have been so interesting to see the outcome of that move in January had it been more publicly knowledgeable that it was Ganacho being the one that was kind of open for the move. Because had that been the case, I think the fan reaction would have been so much different, and I think he would have been sold. Let me know in the comment section down below, do you now wish we did just sell him in January? Especially when his value was higher. Now, Chelsea are considering a bid later this month. Basically, they want to leave it as late in the window as possible. They know that us, the club, United, are going to be desperate to get rid of him, and they probably think that with each week that goes by, we will lower that valuation by 5 million, until eventually we meet their demands. which is unfortunately the position that we find ourselves in now. Now, the deal is also dependent on us getting Sesko. Apparently, that is our priority. We will get a striker sorted and then we'll entertain selling Ganacho. I still don't know how this club in 2025, with all the recruitment team that's been put into place, we're not capable of working on multiple transfers at once yet. But it is what it is. Because if you look at Fabrizio Romano, he's out here saying that Chelsea are working on Xavi Simons and Garnacho at the same time. Why can't we do that, man? Why can't we be selling Garnacho and buying Sesko at the same time? Why is it going to be like, well, we'll do this and then we'll do that? Why? Why, man? Oh, that is one of the biggest things that INEOS has to fix going into next summer. Because whilst we have admittedly been better, I want to say quicker, but the Mbeumo deal was incredibly dragged out. But the fact that we're here maybe going to be able to get Sesko before the season starts, that is still quicker than usual. And so I give them that. But the next thing after being quicker is be quicker and multitask, please. At least I hope Sesko gets done before the start of the season. I need to see his celebration against Arsenal. That would be... Oh, I need it. Now, a few other little bits and bobs just to wrap this video up. So, JJ Gabriel, who is supposedly United's answer to Lamine Yamal or Max Dauman, a 14-year-old, is set to be a part of the under-19s team heading out to the Mladen Ramljak tournament in Croatia. Yeah, you know what? Yeah, I've totally got that name wrong. I get it. But it's all part of our plan to fast track him up the youth levels to eventually be part of that first team. Because with him being just 14 years old, there's a chance that he could just leave United. And he's that hot of a prospect that there will be endless. I would assume pretty much every single top team on the planet would want JJ. And so we, quite rightly, are desperate to keep it, which is why we are fast tracking a 14-year-old into the under-19s, and then I think probably next year permanently in the under-19s, and then 21s, and then you would assume by the time he's 16 he will have at least made his first team debut. But from some positive news with one incredibly promising prospect to unfortunate negative news for another, and that being Shea Lacey. This guy cannot catch a break. It is such a shame because he is so talented, but he's picked up yet another injury, and despite being so young and so talented, it's becoming quite clear that this kid is unfortunately incredibly injury prone. Now, it's said that he's going to be out for a considerable amount of time, which is such shit news to hear. But the club, I think, are doing the right thing. They are taking extra care due to the constant reoccurrence of these injuries. And I definitely think that it's in the best interest of the club and Shea Lacey's career that he takes the extra time out with this injury to finally get things sorted, figure out the problem so that he can have a long career. Because if we just keep rushing him back and he gets injured and injured and injured over and over again, he's not going to have a career to begin with. He unfortunately will just keep falling down the levels until he's one of those big what-if players. And no one wants that to happen. Some good news, though, is that 19-year-old academy talent Jack Mohouse, who we all are aware of now, has agreed a new contract at the club and gone on loan to Leyton Orient, which I think is a fantastic move. We know that Johnny Evans is now in charge. He's the head of loans, I believe, at the club. And if that's his first piece of business, it's a good one. Talking of new contracts for academy graduates, Mainoo, that is still going on. Now, thankfully, this isn't a report about him leaving the club, because again, nobody wants that, but his preference is to stay at United and just sign a new contract. And I think that should be the case, because he is such a talent, and I know that currently it's, for whatever reason, not quite stuck with Ruben Amorim, and I'm a defender of Ruben Amorim, but I believe when you've got a young talent this good, it is your responsibility to nurture that talent and find a way to make it work. Because Mainoo is one of those levels of talents. He's not someone you can just kick out the club, make room for, cash in on. I firmly believe that. This is a player that I believe will one day have the potential to captain the club. And then the last piece of news that has come out today is Mason Mount going on loan to Burnley? Question mark. Now, the source for this is Oliveira Pablo. I will hold my hand up. I don't know who that source is. I'm trying on this channel to learn more about which sources I should actually listen to and which I shouldn't. For example, there was a report come out today that United are interested in Rodrigo from Real Madrid for 75.5 million or whatever, and straight away I knew that was just absolute BS, but that at least got confirmed to me when I looked further down and saw that the source was Team Talk. Trust me guys watching this, if you see some news from Team Talk, just pretend it's not real. because it isn't. But yeah, you guys might know better than me. I don't know who this Oliveira Pablo guy is, but I found it interesting that Mount was being linked with the loan move. I do think it would be a good move for him. In fairness, I think Burnley would be a good place for him. He would start basically every game as long as he's not injured, which isn't necessarily the case at United. It could be a good way for him to build his fitness back up, but on the flip side you could say, well, maybe a season of being sort of like a rotational player will also be good for that. I don't know, let me know in the comment section down below. Do you want to get rid of Mount? Should he be loaned? Also, make sure you leave a like on this video, subscribe if you're not already, and ding that notification bell. And whilst you're here, check out this video on my full opinions on Ollie Watkins versus Benjamin Sesko.